Good evening. I hope you are all doing well. There is a dichotomy in feelings when you have both a simcha on the backdrop of a very complicated Yiddish scenario. The mix of feelings is quite complicated, and I know as a dad for my daughter's bas mitzvah, she needed to feel 110% simcha from me, which is what she got. And I sense that the avoda for a yid is to function in both spaces in 100%. Be 100% bitzar with Jews and 100% besimcha with your avoda. And it is so challenging to do that with authenticity because we blend our feelings so easily. But this morning during Shacharis, I was both sad and happy at the same time. Sad with the current matzav and knowing that we have weeks and months ahead of us and things are going to be bad. And at the same time, to have 100% simcha that my daughter is a bas chiyuva, like it's a fascinating pull on the human condition. And it's an avoda that we all, in our own ways, need to try and uphold a very tall order. I would think I was 100% sad and 100% simcha for moments, but to live with both is it's an avoda meruba, but that's the avoda that's upon us, is to make sure that we're moving forward, trudging forward through the snow, recognizing that it's extremely difficult. And at the same time, we have to have 200% of feelings, 100% that's the positive and 100% that's realistic with what's going on with the world. So as one person said after the bas mitzvah, I'm so glad you had a bas mitzvah because I got to not think about anything else for an hour, which is an unfortunate truth. It's not the right reason to be at a bas mitzvah. Maybe don't tell the father of the bas mitzvah girl, but nevertheless, I appreciate that too. It's a big avoda. Speaking of which, let's get immersed in learning, because this too is a simcha. We're 4 lines from the bottom on Samach Beis and Beis. We're learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Samach Gimel. Yesterday, we saw a case scenario where a woman was pregnant, and a man says to the father, I will hereby marry your daughter after she's born. We said if in fact she's either hukra ubra or whatever, depending on Lokas Rabba and Rabbi Yosef, that's chal. So the Gemara says, 4 lines from the bottom, Amar Abai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Rab Meir, Kulhu Sfir Lahu, Adam Makna Davar Shelo Bal Olam. That I can make a kinyan on something that is lo bal olam. As of right now, it's not in the world, but I can make a kinyan like that. So these shitas are call them mekilim. These are the shitas that hold that you can make a kinyan like this. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that is the case, Hada Amran, we saw that yesterday. And that actually was not talking about pregnancy. That case was talking about truma. We were talking about a case, if you'll recall, where I was being mafresh truma from that which was talush for that which was mechubar, or vice versa. That was a case where we saw that truma so is truma if in fact you intend to remove it. Rebbe, last line, Titania, we have a brisa, turning to the top of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. The pasuk says, Lo saskir eved el adonov. Rashi, Azhara lebezdin shelo yazgiru lebaylo lehishtabelo. You're not allowed to close off, literally, or really to say that this eved has to go to his master. An odd pasuk, because why would you say that an eved should not go to his master? And Revi Omer in the brisa belokech eved al manas l'shachar akasim medaber. The pasuk was speaking about a specific case where the whole goal of the Baal was to free the eved. And because of that, at Bezdin is not allowed to say, oh, you're an Eved now. You're not allowed to say that. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak could go into Kasavle. The case was where he wrote to the Eved, when I purchase you, that's what's going on in the Pasuk. That's why the Pasuk says, therefore, because this person is being purchased in order to be freed, therefore, lo saskir Eved eladona. So in such a case scenario, it's future. I haven't purchased you yet, but when I do, you'll be free. That's davar shelo bal olam, because right now that you're talking through a time warp. It hasn't happened yet. Reb Meir, where do we see that Reb Meir holds that davar shelo bal olam, that you can make a kinyan? The Tanya, the Brisa writes in this first part of the Brisa is the Bal Plugta against Reb Meir. Ha'omer li'isha, if a man says to a woman, Aret mekudeshes li la'achar she'eskay or la'achar she'tiskayri, I'll be married to you after I convert because I'm currently a goy. Or I'll be married to you after you convert because I'm a Jew and you're a goy. La'achar she'eshtachrer, la'achar she'tishtachreri, la'achar she'imos ba'alech, la'achar she'tamos achosech, la'achar she'yachlotz lach yivmech. All of these cases of either where he or she will then be freed from slavery. If there's a chalitza, if a man says that I hope your husband dies or I hope your sister dies, whatever the case may be. In all of these cases, the Tanna Kama writes, Eine Mekudeshes. Reb Meir, 10 lines down on Samach Gimel Amud Aleph says, sorry, Reb Meir Omer Mekudeshes. What's the Chiddush in this case? It's Davar Shelo Ba'al Olam. These cases are futuristic cases, and therefore, because they haven't happened yet, they shouldn't work. Elamai, it must be that Reb Meir is of the opinion that you can be makna davar shelo ba'al olam, that you can make an acquisition of something that has not yet even come into the world. And says the Gemara, we have more shitas in this brisa. We have Rabbi Yochanan Asanlar Omer Eine Mekudeshes, like the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer Mekudeshes. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is of the opinion that it's Mekudeshes. Says the Gemara, Matam Amru Eine Mekudeshes. According to the shitas who hold Eine Mekudeshes, why is it that they're not Mekudeshes? So the Gemara says, Mishum Eva. Mishum Eva is a term that we are familiar with throughout Shas. Eva means that I am concerned about a ripple effect of very bad feelings. Take a look at Rashi, who qualifies this piece of Gemara on the 4th line. Dibur Hamaschil Mishum Eva. Eva Achosa ve'Eva's Baila. Asha'ara Kira Meir Sphirale. The Pshitas that hold Eine Mekudeshes, we're only talking about the cases of the Achosa, where I say to my sister-in-law, where a man says to his sister-in-law, I'll marry you when your sister dies. His sister's mother is the wife, right? Or if you say to, what was the other case? The other case was sisters and Stam any woman that her husband should die, right? Those two cases are Mishum Eva. Asks the Gemara an oddball question, V'nachsho Nami Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Why is it that at the bottom of the page on Samach Beis and Beis, when Abaye was quoting the list of people, he wrote Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov v'Reb Meir. Asks the Gemara, v'nachshov nami Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Why don't you also include Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? The Gemara says, I did. Hainu Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. I think everybody knows that. The answer is that this is the Mar Makom, that Rebbe is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So it's a shtickle chiddush because we're not used to seeing this, because by us it's it's mamash.
Past the halfway point.
We're taka past the halfway point, but the Gemara is not usually. We learn the Gemara. It actually was quoted. The Gemara says there were references to it earlier in Shas. No recollection. Nevertheless, there's a Mar Makom. At some point, we had to establish that Rebbe was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The Gemara chooses here to articulate that to us. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Maybe there's someone else in the mix that holds a makna davar shelo ba'al olam. Perhaps it's Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, v'nachshov nami Rabbi Akiva, Titania, because we have a brisa, more correctly, we have a Mishnah, it should be Tanan. This is a Mishnah that can be found in Maseches Yevamos and in Ksubis, multiple times in Ksubis and in the Dara. So when we read this, we should hopefully remember it. When I read it, I didn't. Sad. Let's continue. Titnan. Konam shani osa leficha. This konam is a commitment that a woman makes. She makes a promise that she's not going to give her husband her proceeds. Ein sarech lahafer. A husband does not have to be made for such. She's not allowed to do that. You can't make a hafara that's a mushba ve'omet. A woman is obligated under these set of circumstances that she's obligated to put her money into the marriage pot. She doesn't get to just not give her proceeds to the husband. It's not allowed. Look what Rabbi Akiva says. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer Shematadi Falav Yeser Min Aroilo. What do we see from Rabbi Akiva? Yes, hafar is required. Why? Because she might, future, she might bring in more money than the minimum she's required to give. Let's say the minimum she's required to give is $100 a month. She pulls in $1,000 a month. So for that extra $900, he does have to be made for her neder so that he can still have access to the extra $900. That's davar shelo ba'al olam. The Raya we see that Rabbi Akiva holds is makna davar shelo ba'al olam. Says the Gemara, you're incorrect. But Tamar Allah, that's not true, because we said on this brisa that Amar Avuna Bered Rabbi Yoshua be'omer sikachu yodai le'oseim v'yodayim isnu ba'olam. No. What she was not saying is that my money won't go there, but my hands won't do that. That's different. Then Rabbi Akiva is correct to say Shematadi v'lav Yasmin. That case is talking about her yadayim. Her yadayim are davar shebala olam, and therefore
They are both.
They are davar shabal olam.
Shabbat.
Yeah, davar shabal olam. Correct. I said it the wrong way.
No, you said the right way.
I said it the right way. Oh, okay. I don't know. You convinced me. I didn't even know that I said it the right way or the wrong way. It's been a long day. So, anyways, Lamaisa, the Gemara says that Machlokas Rabbi Akiva in the Tanakama is not about davar shelo bal olam. She's talking about her hands. Her hands are right in front of her. We're not talking about the produce of her hands. We're talking about the hands itself. What the hands make. The hands are in the world. Therefore, Machlokas of Yafer about what's in the future is not about davar shelo bal olam. Her hands are already here. Next Mishnah. Halfway down on Samach Gimel Amarav. Amar Elisha read Mekudeshes le'amanas she'adaber alayich l'shilton. I'll go speak to the king for you. Ve'es she'imach kipah. I'll work for you like a worker. Then, if diber aleha l'shilton ve'aseh imach kipah, if he did like he said, then Mekudeshes, no problem. It's like leverage. You're going to go talk to the ambassador. I'll put in a good word for you. So the chora, that actually works for Kiddushin. Seemingly, that's worth money. We'll see in the Gemara what this means. If he doesn't do what he said, then pashat that ain't mekudeshes. Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Amar Reish Lakish, ushanasan l'shava pruta. That was very odd. What do you mean shava? Why give this case if he's giving her a pruta? So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Ubischarlo, for the financial value of what he's providing her. Is it not the case that they wouldn't be able to get married after all? Tanya, if we are talking about the past tense, bischar shehir kavtich al hachamor shehoshavtich bekarono besvina. A man says, for the reward for which I've already done for you in the past, where I've given you a ride on the donkey, or I gave you a ride in the carriage or on a ship, ain't a mekudeshes. Why? Because that money has yet to be paid. It's functionally a loan, and you can't get married based on a loan, as we've seen earlier in the Masechta. But that's because his framing was past tense. What if his framing was future tense? Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, first of the long lines. What if instead he was talking about the future? Bischar, says the Gemara, she'ar kivecha lachamor, that perhaps in the future, happy to give you a ride in the future. Now there's no loan out, right? I'm going to do something that isn't a loan. I'm going to give this to you, but that giving to you will function as the schar for marriage. Or I'll return you, I'll carry you in a carriage or in a ship. Then mikudeshes. So says the Gemara. If you want to say in this brisa, bidi yohavla shavapruta, if you want to say that here too in this brisa, the brisa that's in the Gemara, 2 lines before the wide lines, if you want to say that money was given over, that brisa says black on white on the first very long line, bischar she'ar kiveich, not bishavapruta, but the value that you would gain from what I will give you in the future of giving you a ride, shavapruta, no problem. So today the equivalent would be an Uber ride. I'm giving you a ride to go somewhere. The Uber would for sure be a shavapruta. I looked this morning to take an Uber to Deerfield. I wanted to take a safe driver. I went for Uber Black. Couldn't have had a name that was more in line with what I wasn't looking for. So I canceled it. But Lamaisa was $75 for 20. It's $3 a minute. That was very expensive. Anyways, says the Gemara over here, it's Pasha that it's Bischar. So says the Gemara, and furthermore, another reason why Reish Lakish Lechora is wrong if there's a Shavapruta in our Mishnah is because Tanya, if a woman says to a man, Shevimi b'tzavsa, come sit with me, I'll marry you. Schok lefanai, play a game for me, be a comedian. Rakod lefanai, do a dance. Asay kedimus hazeh, make a building like that building. So says the Gemara Shamid, we make an approximation. We make an assessment. If that which the husband, soon-to-be husband, did for the soon-to-be wife, they're married. If the work that he did was a shavapruta, the dancing, whatever it may be, then they're mekudeshes. Vimlaveina mekudeshes.
No, they cut it off. Do it for me, and I'll be married to you.
It's Aramaic, so the rules are not the same in the grammar. But no, I think she said, I want to do this. I want you to do something for me that's worth money. And if you do this, then we'll be married.
But assumedly, he still says.
He still has to say
He
something.
must say hurry up.
He still has to say something. Yeah. But here we're just, the framing is that he's doing something for her that's valuable. That's valuable. I want to go listen to a show by a comedian. Tickets $15. I'm going to ask, if I'm a female, I'll ask a man, you give me the comedy show for $15. And then say, I read Mekudeshes, the comedy shows you Kedas Moshe Yisrael. No problem. Because that's schar. So if she says that, so then shaman, we make an assessment. If the service he provided was worth a pruta, so here we have another source. And if you want to say that this brisa too, where a woman says to a man, give me a valuable service and then I'll be married to you, that can't be. Over here, the brisa says shaman. We're approximating. No, there's no shava pruta over here. We're just looking, is the service you provided worth a pruta? Yes or no? And therefore, to Yufta to Reish Lakish, that's a big challenge to Reish Lakish, because the way that Reish Lakish at the open of our Gemara analyzed our Mishnah was to say that there must have been a shava pruta when someone does provide a service. In our Mishnah, he provided a service. I'll go speak to the senator on your behalf. I'll give you, what was the second case? I'll work for you, whatever the case may be. There, Reish Lakish has to say that it's with a shava pruta. The other two cases are also providing services, but the Mishnayos don't say like that. The Mishnayos say against Reish Lakish. So how does Reish Lakish answer? The Gemara says 10 lines from the bottom, a little bit less. Amalach Reish Lakish, he gives a good answer. Hi Tana Bara, this outside Tana, namely, the brisa that we saw after the Gemara starts, that starts 2 lines after the Gemara opens. That brisa, Savar Eina L'Schiris Ela Lebasov. That brisa holds that when I'm working for you, my salary isn't due until the end. Therefore, while I'm doing the Maisa, it's not a loan because I don't get paid until the end. Let's say you ask me to do a task. You ask me to mow the lawn. As I mow the lawn, I have earned 0 money until I'm done mowing the lawn. L'may nafkamina, if it starts raining and I stop 50% of the way through, do I get paid or do I not get paid? That brisa holds, you only get paid at the end. You're not done until you're done, and therefore, it's not a loan, and therefore it's shava pruta. Because at the end, that's when you get paid, so there's no loan during.
It just uses it as a package. It doesn't look at it as time at all.
Correct. That's how we look at the brisa. That's why in the brisa, when he provided her a service, they're married because there was no loan. However, in our Mishnah, where Reish Lakish says we need to add a shava pruta to our Mishnah, the Tana Dida in our Mishnah Savar Yeshna l'schius mitchil v'ad. So if every minute you work is X number of cents to the dollar, whatever it is. Let's say that it takes an hour to mow the lawn, and I charge $60 every 10 minutes. Every 6 minutes is $10. I'm going to make, right? That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to saying I only get paid 60 at the end. Really, my clock is, I'm like a lawyer. My clock is meters running. That's the right way to say the meter's running. If the meter's running, then by the time I get to the end, it's a loan because I've already worked. You already owe me money, and therefore it's a loan, and therefore Eina Mekudeshes without an extra shava pruta. That's why our Mishnah is Yeshna Schirus Mitchil V'ad Sov. You have to pay by increments of time, and because you have to pay by increments of time, it's a loan, and therefore without an extra shava pruta, there's no way that our Mishnah would be Mekudeshes. Can't get married based on a loan. Therefore, Reish Lakish says that because our Mishnah is Yeshna L'Schirus Mitchila V'ad Sof, can't be a loan. So how else does the Mishnah Mekudeshes? Must therefore be that there's an extra shava pruta. Oh, so it says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom, 7 lines. Why is it that Reish Lakish had to squeeze a square peg into a round hole? Why did he make it? That our Mishnah was talking about a case where his salary was in increments of, let's say, per minute, per quarter hour, whatever it was. Why did we have to say that and that we had to say that he gave a shava pruta? It honestly would have been easier to just disagree with it would have been easier to just disagree with Reish Lakish, accept our tiyuvta, and say that our Mishnah is also Eina Schirus Mitchila V'ad Sof, and there's no need for a Shava Pruta. Why was Reish Lakish wrangling our Mishnah into a pretzel? Why did they have to turn? It was easier to understand our Mishnah like the two brises. Why? Why did Reish Lakish have to say anything? So the Gemara says, Omar Rava, Masnisan Kshise. Our Mishnah is taka difficult. Why is our Mishnah difficult? Because my area de Tani Almanas. If you want to tell me that what's going on in our Mishnah is like the Brisas, and what's really trying to happen over here is we're just saying that if that's what you're trying to say, then say it. Say Bischar. Say something that's clear. But in our Mishnah, it doesn't say Bischar. Our Mishnah says Almanas. Look at our Mishnah again. Ha'omer li'isha read mekudeshesli. Almanas she'adaber. Not Bischar she'adaber. The second two brises that we saw were Bischar, Bishamin, something. But our Mishnah says Almanas. So Reish Lakish can't handle that. Elishma mino. Kol Almanas heichad yavlahu. It must be that every time a brisa or a Mishnah uses a condition of service provided with the language of Almanas, Reish Lakish is right. And the Gemara accepts that as a real answer. And therefore we have the following division. If a man says to a woman, we are hereby betrothed to one another because I will provide you with service X, and he provides service X, they're married without a Shava Pruta. But if he says, I'm conditioned that I provide service X, then it's only if he adds another Shava Pruta. That's how Reish Lakish, that's how the Gemara concludes. Two clear tracks. One is the language of Bischar or Shaman, which is very clear. But when we say Almanas, Reish Lakish says, no, that's a terrible language. It's confusing. And therefore, you're not married without a Shava Pruta. That brings us to our new Mishnah, Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. Almanas she'yirtze Abba. I'll be married to you on the condition that the father allows. So it says the Gemara, Rotza ha'av mekudeshes. If the father allows, then they are married. Whose father are we talking about? Rashi. Almanas she'yirtze Abba aviv shel chasan. Can anybody explain that to me? Why isn't it aviv shel kala?
Literally. I mean, I don't know how old she is, but you have to.
If she's a Gedola, then that answers the question.
You have to assume that he's a Gadol because.
He's for sure a Gadol.
He can't be Mekadosh.
Can't be Mekadosh.
So, and his father has no say. I'm talking about Thanksgiving dinner, but aside from that, there's no other standing for the father of the.
I do not understand this. Bepashtus, and Rutosha doesn't say anything either. Bepashtus, I would have thought that what we're talking about is her as a katana. That's what I would have thought. But as I looked in Rashi, I'm like, well, I didn't have any time to look into this. But it requires an answer. It doesn't make sense. What kind of condition is that? Maybe Bekoshi Rav, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Abba means my father, so he's someone who's born.
That's what he says. Almanashi, you're to Abba. That's what Rashi says.
Right, I mean, you're asking me how does Rashi.
What's the case, Bichlal? Why is it? What does his father have anything to do with this?
He wants his father to want the. He doesn't have to want, but he's making a case.
So then you're saying that she's a Gedola. You're saying she's a Gedola.
Yeah.
But it's there.
And then it's a
Either
red.
way, no, whether or not.
Either way.
She can't. We need her father's permission.
Well, it's
That goes without saying.
Maybe he's talking, maybe.
Maybe
he
they had
doesn't want her
conditions.
father.
He's leaving
Yeah.
one escape hatch. If my father's really not into this, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
No, there's a difference between years and years and which just, it's not the same.
Not by a woman. By a woman, it's Yirtze. Whatever. Okay, I mean, that's subject to debate. But a father has to be okay with the Kiddushin of his daughter if she's a Katana.
Yeah, it could be.
But no,
This case could be, maybe. He could kind of.
Well, that's interesting. Not even talking to the Kala.
Yeah.
He said the case could be where, let's say I want to marry Rachel. So I'm not talking to Rachel. I'm talking to the Shver. I'm talking to my father-in-law. I said, by the way, I want to marry your daughter, provided that my father's okay with it. Okay, we can come up with a case. Very good. Very good. That's great. So either she's a Gedola, And well, and no matter what, this is just a random tonight. You could have said if my shoes are a size 9 also, probably.
I think that might be really the right answer. It's just, it's not. Why he's doing it? Why do any of this?
That's also true. I've never been at a
Why
wedding
are
where
you dancing? Just give him. It's not that much money.
Some people actually, it sounds like some people actually respect their father's opinion here.
don't push it, Joe. Oh, I'm only in Daf Yomi with my father in the back. I'm not. All right. Let's say that he had this dialogue with the father, and before the father could respond, seemingly, that's what it means. We'll analyze in the Gemara what happened. Mesa'av harezo mekudeshes. We're under an assumption that they're married. Meis haben. Wow. Do we need to get? Right? Because he said hare, huh? Or Yibum. One of the two.
Much.
Neither of them are wonderful, but yes, Yibum is worse. So says the Gemara, Mesa ben milamdin ha'av lomar she'eno rotze. Because there was a condition here, we want to save a bunch of bad case scenarios over here. Either that she's going to get a get and she can't marry a Kohen, or Yibum, whatever.
She wouldn't get a get. He got it. Nobody get a get. He's dead.
No, but she would have been married. Oh, it's only Yibum.
So, yeah. Which seems to be much worse.
Neither of them are roses, no?
Agreed, but it just feels like we are really. Yeah.
Right. Another nafkamina would just be a Kohen, no? But even if it
That's
isn't
sure.
the case of kid,
Right.
even if she has a kid, say she.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Right. So says the Gemara, Malamden Esa'av, Malamden Ha'av, we teach him to say in a rotza to undo the marriage. That means even after the husband, the potential husband would die, the aruz, when he dies, we can still undo the marriage because the condition is posthumous. The condition lives past the death of the fiance, and the father can say in any rotza, and therefore they're not even married. That's crazy, by the way. That's that's just the lumdus of that is crazy.
Then were they close
Right.
the whole time that they were married?
No, that's just the last case of Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi's
Yeah,
event,
that's
yeah.
Malak, yeah.
Mhm.
That's a
What?
case.
But if the father cannot do it like that, Freya, but what does it mean for the entire time they were together?
Well, they weren't together. It's just Arison. They weren't allowed to sleep together. The question is, what was her status from Harad Mikudeshesli on the condition that my father said yes? So there's no nafkamina is like if she got pregnant, then they were breaking halacha. That's not allowed to sleep together because it was just Arison. All right, the Gemara analyzes. My almanas shiur tzaba. When we say that Harad Mikudeshesli almanas shiur tzaba, what are we expecting from the chassan's father? Ilema ad amar abba in. If you want to say that the father can't be passive, he has to be active and say, why, yes, I approve of this marriage. If that's true, then what about the case of Mesa'av Hareza Mikudeshes, V'halo Amar in? In a case where the father dies, and he did so without, had he said something, we would know the answer. The Mishnah brings the case because he didn't say anything. And by virtue of the fact that he didn't say anything, he's Mikudeshes. It can't be that we're waiting for the word in. Can't be that we're waiting for him to say yes. Ella, turning to the top of Samach Gimel Amud, the Gemara says, Ella almanas sheyishtok abba. The condition that allows him to get married is silence. Shtika kioda damya. So says the Gemara, well, if that's true, then ema seifa, then we have a problem with the last case. Meis haben, what do you mean? Malamden esa'av lomar she'eno rotze. Amai v'hashasik. We know exactly what he wants. He didn't say anything. But why are we telling him to say, just don't talk? So why are we malamed him to not say anything? Just keep your mouth shut and everything will be fine. So says the Gemara, Ella, Omar lo almanas shelo yimcheab. What almanas means, it says so that the father shouldn't protest. But now we have a stira. Are you saying that Reisha b'chad taima u'mitziyasa b'seifa b'chad taima? The Mishnah is talking about two cases, two different types of cases. One where we want the father to be proactive and say in, and one where we want the father to be silent, and they both have the same result, which is, of course, a stira. So to this, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yanai, in. Okay, that's difficult. Amar Reish Lakish, Shmami nami de Rav Yanai. Because Rav Yanai learns our Mishnah the way that he does, we therefore see the following principle. Samach Gimel Amud Beis, 6 lines down. Dachkinan umukminan masnisin betrei taima vali b'dechad tana. It's better to squeeze and to reshape a Mishnah, to have 2 different reasons according to one Tana, namely that one case in our Mishnah could be that we want the father to proactively say in, and another case where the father says nothing. It's better to do that than it is to have one Mishnah with clean reasons according to different Tanaim. I find this to be difficult, personally. It's not what I feel like that's not what we see in Shas. I don't know, it could be wrong. Because we do try to avoid having the Reisha and the Seifa being different authors. And here he's saying that's not true. We want them to be the same author, even if the Svaras are opposite, which is challenging, but that's what the Gemara says. Okay. Rav Yosef bar Ami Omar, L'olam chad taimahu. Really, everything is one time. Umay al Menashe yirtze Abba. What then was the initial case in the Mishnah of al Menashe yirtze Abba? It's not that he said in. Al Menashe lo yimcha Abba mikan ve'ad shloshim yom. Okay, that's better. He comes up with a real answer. Nobody's saying in. The first case is up to 30 days, and the second case is just silence before he dies. Fine, very good. Next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah 10, 12 lines down on Samach Gimel, Amud Beis. Kidashti es biti ve'eni yodea lemi kidashtiya. This is not a good scenario. A father marries off his daughter, and he can't remember which avrech in the Beis Medrash he married off his daughter to. I don't understand this. I don't. Very difficult. Uba echad v'amar. This guy pipes up and says, "Ani kidashtiha." Oh, she's a beautiful girl. I'm the one who proposed to her. So says the Gemara, ne'eman. He's believed. We have to see what it is that he's believed for. Is he believed in as much as he has to now divorce her? Or is he believed in that he's married to her? We'll have to see the nafkaminas in the Gemara. This is going to turn out to be a machlokas amorai. Next case. Ze omar aniki dashtiya, v'ze omar aniki dashtiya. If instead of one bacher in yeshiva piping up and saying, your beautiful daughter is my wife, 2 bachurim say, no, aniki dashtiya. The other guy says, aniki dashtiya. So then, shneim nosnin get. Both of them are allowed to give a get, are required to give a get. V'im ratu echad nosein get, ve'echad kones. If they want, one person can give a get, and the other person can marry the woman. Very difficult Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Omar Rav, when we say ne'eman in the first case, that means a father married off his daughter and he wasn't sure who married her. And one guy, only one guy, comes up and says, Aniki dashtiya. We said he's ne'eman. What does Rav say? Omar Rav, he's ne'eman only in regards to litain get. Ve'ein ne'eman lichnos. He's not allowed to marry her. He's not actually married to her. And the Gemara presents the svara for both sides of Rav's shita. Ne'eman litain get. Why is it that we say we believe him enough that he's obligated to bring a get? Because ein adam chote v'lo. This guy has no benefit. What is he doing? He's just getting divorced. Well, why would he bother saying it must be true? And at the same time, ve'ein ne'amar lichnos, because ema yitzro tokvo. The reason why he can't get married is because maybe he's leveraging a scenario to try and be intimate with her. And therefore that's not reasonable either. All of that is shitas Rav. Ravasi Amar af neheman lichnos. Unbelievable. A father says, I don't know who I married my daughter off to. One random guy says it was me. And the father's like, okay, I guess. Halach l'maisa, they're married, they can sleep together, they can build a family. L'shem l'siferes. So says the Gemara, Umode Ravasi agrees in the following case. We were talking about a case where the father forgot. But let's say, says Ravasi, Be'omeres, where she says, Niskadashti v'enu yodas l'mini niskadashti. This is even worse than the father forgetting, is the wife. She's engaged and she doesn't remember who her fiance is. It says the Gemara, Bo'acher v'amar kidashtiha. One guy says, I married her. She ein ne'eman lichnos. There, Ravasi agrees with Rav that just like Rav says it in 2 cases. Rav says when the father doesn't know who she married and when the daughter doesn't know who she married. Not Rav Yossi. Rav Asi says, no, when the father doesn't know who she married, one guy comes up and says, I married her, we believe him, even for lichnos, even to marry. Masha Ein Kain, in this case, he agrees with Rav that if the woman herself forgot, then there's no ne'amanus to say that they could be married. Now the Gemara asks a kasha on all of this. The Gemara says, Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Ratu, echad nosein get ve'echad kones. At the end of our Mishnah, we had this line, that if there are two men who are claiming in regards to a case where a father said, I forgot who I married you off to, and two Bachrim claimed, Aniki Dashtiya, we had said at the end of our Mishnah that it's possible that one person could give a get and one person could marry. If that's true, to Rav, because Rav says there's no Knisa over here. So if Rav says there's no Knisa when there's one Bachar, why would Rav say that there's Knisa when there's two Bachar? That doesn't make sense. The Gemara says halfway down on Samach Gimel Amud Beis, yes, it does. Hamar lach Rav. Rav would answer, Shiny Hasam. It's different when you have two Bachrim saying Aniki Dashtiya. The cave and the Ika Acher Ba'adei. Because there are two people who are approaching at the same time, saying Aniki Dashtiya, if there is one that then changes his tune and says, I'll be the one who gets divorced, it must be Irtuse Mirtas. He's afraid to say the wrong claim. And therefore, when he changes his tune to say, I'll be the one who gets divorced, that's a raya that the other shita must be true. And when he says Aniki Dashtiya, it must be that they're allowed to get married. And that means that Rav holds that there is a case scenario where a man who says Aniki Dashtiya can get married, but it's only where he's accompanied by another man who says, you're right, but I'm going to get divorced. So when the two of them come in together, then it works. And Tanya Kavase, the Rav Asi, we have a shita that supports the shita of Rav Asi, that Rav Asi was of the opinion that Afneam on Lichnos in the following case. Kidashti es biti ve'eni yodea lemi kidashtia, uva acher va'amar kidashtia, Afneim on Lichnos, black on white, just like the shita of Rav Asi. 2/3 of the way down, Kansa, uva acher va'amar ani kidashtia. If after they got married, so man, remember that according to Rav Asi and this brisa, if a man walks over to this father and says, I'm the one who married your daughter, he's a lone soldier, he's a lone bachar, so they get married. If afterwards another guy comes up to him and says, after they're married, then another bachar shows up and says, no, I'm the one who married Rachel. Says the Gemara, lo kol hemenu le'osra, we don't trust him at all. The Gemara continues in the Brisa. A woman who says, I got married, but I don't know to whom I got married. We don't trust him because we're afraid that she may cover for him and be like, sure, yeah, we'll just be married. Sure. We're afraid that she's going to cover. This is a new idea, not presented in the Gemara, but that's what the Brisa says. Now the Gemara asks the Kasha. The Gemara says, Mahu liskol al yado. Would there be skila with this woman who was now a na'ara me'urasa? Remember, if the bachar says Aniki Dashtiya, then that means she's a na'ara me'urasa. Let's say she then sleeps with another man. She chayav skila. She's a regular na'ara me'urasa, even though the way we got to the fact that she was engaged was atypical. The father wasn't sure if she was who he got engaged to. A bachar says Aniki Dashtiya. Now they're married. Is she a regular na'ara me'urasa? Yes or no? This is a machlokas amoraim. 3/4 of the way down. Rav Amar Ein Soklin. Rav Samar, there's no skila. She's not a regular na'ara me'urasa. Rav Asi Amar Soklin. Rav Asi was of the opinion that she is a regular na'ara me'urasa and there is skila. Rav Amar Ein Soklin ki hemne rachmana la'av le'isura liktala lo hemne. In a case like this where there's so much confusion, we only believe him and the father in as much as there's an isser. But that's an atypical case. We cannot mete out a capital punishment in such a case. We believe the father completely. And once the father accepts the Kiddushin from the one bachar, then she is a regular na'ara me'urasa. If she then sleeps with another man, she's chayav skila. Amar Rav Asi, who said skila, he is umodina beomeras niskadashti she'ein soklin. That if there is a case where she says niskadashti, then there's no skila there. Amar Rav Asi, hani shmaitza didi mirafsin igri. This is a phrase that's been used by a lot of maforshim. Mirafsin igra is when things are very problematic. The letter has been torn up. So says the Gemara, what's the problem? Rav Asi saying this about his own shita, by the way. Rav Asi was of the opinion that in a case of niskadashti she'ein soklan, and he gives the following challenge to his own shita. Says the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom. Hashta uma b'makom she'im ba lichnos kones amris soklin. In a case scenario where we have that if he's ba lichnos, that if he wants to get married and we allow him to get married, that there's skila. Makom she'im ba lichnos ein kones. Then in a case scenario where he wants to get married and we don't allow it, ein odin shesoklin. All the more so there should be skila because we didn't allow that. And says the Gemara, Velohi, that svara is incorrect. After all, la'av hemne rachmana ledida lo mehemna. We don't care about her shitas. We only care about his, and therefore it's correct in that second half of the Kal V'chomer that they can't get married, but that's for other reasons. Now Rav Chizda disagrees with this approach. Rav Chizda l'taimei the Amar Rav Chizda b'nei Rav Chizda Amar echad zeh ve'echad zeh ein soklin. Sorry, whereas 6 lines, 7 lines from the bottom. V'az Rav Chizda l'taimei. Rav Chizda has his own rationale. The Amar Rav Chizda b'ni zeh, my child, ben teisha shanim v'yom echad. He's 9 years old in one day. Biti zu bas gimel shanim v'yom echad. And there's a young girl who's 3 years in one day. What's the common denominator of these two ages? This is when bia becomes proper bia. For a man, bia becomes proper bia when he's 9 years in one day. For a woman, bia becomes proper bia when she's 3 years in one day. So says the Gemara, in these age brackets, ne'eman lekorban, aval lo lemakos v'lo le'onshin. Rav Chizda says there are no onshin in this category, and this is similar enough to our case, where we say that there is no onshin. And Tanya Kavase, the Rav Chizda. Last couple of lines on Samach Gimel Amud Beis. We'll stop at the Mishnah at the top of Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Tanya Kavase, the Rav Chizda, b'ni zeh ben Yud Gimel Shana v'Yom Echad, biti zeh Yud Beis Shana v'Yom Echad. In these cases, what is the level of ne'emanus? Ne'eman l'nedar mul'charam mul'hekdeshos v'la'arachin. These age brackets are sufficient to trust about nedarim. Charamim is a special way to give something to the Beis Hamikdash. Ul'hekdeshos, to make something hekdesh. Ul'arachim, when a person commits to give an amount of money to the Beis Hamikdash based on the value of a person in certain standing. Avalol l'makos la'onshin. Rav Chizda holds us across the board that in cases like this we do not hold that there would be any skila. L'maisa, it's a 3-way machlokas, seemingly, between Rav and Rav Asi and Rav Chizda in regards to skila by this oddball case of whether or not she's a na'ara me'urasa and whether or not there's skila. We'll stop at the second line on Samach Daled Amud Aleph, wishing you all a beautiful night.